Hello, let's get this show on the page. Welcome to A Tight Right Bite with LaFaye. So, how can we get this show on the page? By this, I mean, how can we follow the infamous rule show, don't tell? Which is really a false binary because showing and telling are both part of storytelling. But oftentimes, when we want to show, we're not really sure how it's done. So, let's take a look. A lot of times, they talk about showing as bringing readers into the moment. How can we bring them into the action of our story or poem or nonfiction piece? And the answer to that is often the use of active voice, which leads to the use of active verbs. Interesting translation of verbs there. All right, so instead of saying, he was angry, emotions are best shown through action and reaction and figurative language. For instance, he was mad enough. Let's try that again. Mad enough to chew sand and spit glass. That's pretty angry, I'd say. Okay. And so here we have an example of using figurative language to show anger. Mad enough to shatter his favorite mug against the counter. He said, ta-da. Here's another example of showing versus telling. It shows how angry they are by the actions they do. Now, let's look at anger as reaction. When Meg confessed to breaking his favorite mug, here we see someone really overreact to it because they're shaking. And when he just says, yeah, it helps to know motivation. What's going on inside the person? Why it is that they would get so angry. It may be Ethan's trying to work on his anger management. It may be that this is the fourth time Meg has broken a mug or something that Ethan owns. We don't know. But the point is we are using concrete detail to show versus tell. For instance, we could say Ellie and Mo were best friends. Or we could say Ellie and Mo were share a lollipop close. That says, or you could say Ellie and Mo were share a lollipop friends. Or you could say Ellie Here again, we see their friendship rather um, than because someone told us they're best friends. We see that they're best friends using concrete examples, action, and bringing us into the moment of what these two friends do together. A big part of active voice are active verbs, specific detail, and emotional and physical immediacy. It means that we're not kept at a distance from our characters. They're not described as far away, but we are right there with them. We're doing what they're doing, we're experiencing what they're experiencing. And so, a big part of show us what's on the page is bringing us into the moment through the use of active voice, active details, and very specific details that show us not just um, what's happening, but who the characters are. We learn a lot about Ellie and Mo from the things that they do. We know they're very active people because when they're going to softball practice, they're walking there and they're practicing as they go. We know they're imaginative because they're swapping stories as they stared up at the sky, waiting for their parents to pick them up as the stars started to come out. So we also have a sense of setting, and this relates to one of the most important aspects of um, using active voice, which is double duty details, an LaFaye original. Um, and this means that when you use a detail, ask yourself, is it doing more than just showing us character? Is it also showing us setting? Is it also propelling the plot? If it's only doing one thing, that detail is probably not doing as much work as it should. So when we see them headed to softball practice, we're not just seeing that they are headed to softball practice, which is about action and setting. We also know that Ellie and Mo are good enough friends that they can shag flies while moving. And that says a lot. I also would suggest that it's probably a smaller town, a safer world than many places because these guys are waiting by themselves for the parents to pick them up, and they're also able to walk to the field. So these are things that work as a double duty detail. And they show us stuff without having to explain things. For instance, if you have a shy character, you probably want to show that shyness rather than tell us about it. So that when anybody mentions the shyness, we're like, oh yeah, I saw that myself. So if we have a character Baylor sat in the back row, using his book as a shield, hoping a front row kid answered the question. Here we have a strong sense that Baylor is not one who wants to volunteer information. And we see that he's a reader. Or we can make that assumption based on the fact that they have a book to use as a shield. Now, the other possibility is that Baylor doesn't read, and that's why Baylor doesn't want to get called on because he can't read the book. Again, the actions and physicality of this scene propels the plot forward by introducing new questions or observations. And the answer to whether or not he's a reader depends on what details come next. And that is one of the other things you want the showing to do. You want it to lead to questions that keep us reading. So, when it comes to getting the show on the page, we want to use active verbs, specific details, emotional and physical intimacy, immediacy, and double duty details. This has been a tight right bite with author LaFaye. You can find out more about her and her writing and writing tips at Sylvanosity on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and there is also an Alexandria LaFaye YouTube channel you can check out. I hope to see you there. Thank you. Right on.